Why Hitman isn't a stealth game? Whoa, negative maxing? Is this gonna be negative maxing? This isn't spooky scary, hopefully. This is gonna be lighthearted.
In the year
A video
2000,
game.
a small Danish studio released their very first video game. A gritty
Oh, that's the
stealth action
original
title
Hitman?
inspired by John Woo action films and games like Thief, The Dark Project. They called it Hitman Codename 47, and it saw you playing as, get this, a hitman, tasked with exploring a semi-open world and disguising yourself to infiltrate various locations and kill your target, hopefully without being spotted. Unfortunately for us,
Dude, there's Hitman 1, 2,
Codename
and 3?
47 was
You could dress up
pretty
like
terrible. Yeah,
a
it's
clown and other
not a good
things?
game.
There's like
The
weird
camera and
mods?
UI are awful, it looks ugly as hell, and any solution to one of its levels that isn't just going in guns blazing is invariably so arcane and poorly explained that you'll never figure it out without a walkthrough. I do not under any circumstances recommend playing it. That's probably not how you expected me to open a video all about how much I love Hitman. But it's true, the original game and kind of even its sequel are really not that great, but what they are
Whoa.
is ambitious and utterly unique. While the early games might not have been very much fun, it's a testament to just how compelling Hitman's core fantasy is that they sold well regardless, even if you can only really see the outline of what the franchise would one day become. It wasn't until the fourth entry in the series, Blood Money, that the vision of Hitman finally became clear. Although not completely. While the level design of Blood Money is much stronger, featuring densely designed locales in interesting settings and much
like
greater freedom in
GTA.
how to plan out your hit, the game was ultimately held back by technology. Blood Money has clunky, awkward controls, and its missions feel too small and simplistic to come across as anything other than tiny, primitive glimpses of the game IO Interactive truly wanted to make. It wouldn't be until 10 years, 2 horrible movies, and 1 game of which we do not speak later, that they finally got their chance
No one
in the
likes
form of the
Absolution?
World of Assassination trilogy, a soft reboot of the Hitman franchise, concluding with the
Alright,
recently
we'll have to
released
play
Hitman
this one.
3, that truly capitalizes on everything that I think Hitman was meant to be. Following the release of the confusingly named Hitman 1 in 2016, Hitman went from a franchise that I could never really understand the appeal of to my favourite stealth game series of all time. So, with the announcement that IO Interactive are giving Agent 47 a well-deserved break, I thought that now was the time to take a look at all 3 World of Assassination games to pick apart what makes the best Hitman levels tick and try to figure out what makes Hitman so unique. So, what is that, I hear you ask? What makes Hitman special compared to other stealth games like Dishonored, Metal Gear Solid, or Deus Ex? Well, buckle in, because I'm about to say something that sounds weird, but is going to make more sense the more you think about it, okay?
Simple?
That is, that Hitman isn't really a stealth game. Its stealth mechanics and guard AI have always been fairly basic, and it's definitely not a shooter. The game goes out of its way to discourage getting into firefights. What Hitman really is a problem-solving game like Factorio, Polybridge, or basically any Zachtronics game. Some of my most fun experiences playing Hitman have been in solving fun puzzles and finding creative solutions to self-imposed challenges. For example, how the hell you can infiltrate an eyes wide shut party without wearing a disguise, figuring out the best route to transport a sniper rifle past guards and civilians up to a rooftop in Marrakesh, and masterminding a plot to trick this guy into blowing himself up with an explosive golf ball. I think Hitman is at its best when its levels facilitate this kind of abstract, experimental play. And the game is at its worst when it either forces you to play in a particular way or doesn't appropriately reward you for being clever and understanding the game's systems. Don't believe me? To explain how well most Hitman levels encourage you to think on your feet and plan your way around problems, I need only show you one of the few Hitman levels that doesn't, namely the infamously terrible Colorado from Hitman 1. Colorado sees you taking down a group of 4 domestic terrorists, all hiding out on a farmhouse alongside their buddies. The targets are Sean Rose, the leader of the bunch, Ezra Berg, who has a funny face, Penelope Graves, who's quick and nimble when she needs to be, and Maya Parvati, who's one tough militia person. All 4 targets are incredibly difficult to approach, and the whole level is well guarded by a small army of soldiers, with very few ways to infiltrate the compound and almost no means of creating a distraction or an accident without getting spotted. Colorado is a well-constructed stealth game level, and that's exactly why it's terrible for Hitman. Colorado gives players no room to improvise or have fun because every disguise is just another soldier, and the base is so well knocked down that there are no fun kill methods to try and incorporate, like feeding people to a hippo or getting their wives to push them off a balcony. Because there's no margin for error, Colorado forces you into repeating the same boring, tried and tested tactics over and over again. Even trying to think outside the box is grounds for getting your face filled with bullets and having to start over. I thought I could smuggle a sniper rifle up to this water tower and pick off all 4 targets before making a quick getaway, but even after the painstaking effort of actually sneaking up there, it turns out that sniping anyone instantly aggroes the entire base, and the water tower is the first place they check, rendering this strategy all but moot. Hitman might have all the trappings of a stealth
Wouldn't you
game,
be
but
able to-
ultimately the actual execution, pun intended, is just the icing on the cake. And it's in the experimentation, exploration, and the figuring out how you can kill a bunch of people dressed as a clown where the real fun lies. But how does Hitman do this? How is it possible to design a game that actually promotes creativity rather than by design restricting it? One of the major ways the Hitman team does this is in the way they approach level design. Specifically, by seeing each location not as a single tailored challenge, but a complex interwoven network of systemic problems created by the environment and NPCs. Some of the biggest
Hitman is the
inspirations of
best
the Hitman
puzzle
team
game?
come from the world of social philosophy, specifically from Pierre Bourdieu and Irving Goffman, who pioneered the theories of dramaturgy
What
and
a
social spaces
wild
respectively.
theory, too.
This might
Or
seem
not
like
theory,
an
but
odd field
like
to draw from,
outlook
given that Agent 47 barely talks
on
and
the
isn't
game.
exactly the most personable guy, but sociology and Hitman go hand in hand. To quote Goffman, we are all just actors trying to control and manage our public image. We act based on how others might see us. In other words, our identities are defined not by who we think we are, but by those around us, and the rules of the place we're in. By applying this logic to Hitman, we see the origins of some of the game's most interesting emergent puzzles. Drawing attention to yourself in Hitman by not adhering to, say, the social rule against brandishing a scimitar at random people won't just lower your score, it's also usually suicide, so you have to learn to play smart. Each disguise you don will grant you access to different locations, but they will also change your social identity, altering which opportunities you have available to you and how the NPCs will react to your actions. For example, in Mendoza, your experience walking around the big central party disguised as a guest is vastly different to your experience disguised as a guard. As a civilian, you'll be constantly barred entry and asked for your invitation, but it will be much easier to blend in. As a guard, however, you'll be able to walk in wherever you like without getting frisked, and openly carry most weapons. However, because you appear to be a heavily armed mercenary away from his post, people are naturally going to be much more suspicious of you. The bodyguards of one of your targets will outright ignore you if you're just another dude in a tux, but they'll be highly suspicious of you when you're dressed in military getup. This constant change in Agent 47's relationship with his environment extends to Pierre Bourdieu's theories of the front stage and backstage. In short, his theories are based around the idea that in public settings we are constantly performing, but in private settings, or backstage, we reveal who we truly are. The Hitman team uses this idea to create nice level design arcs that set up and then pay off fun moments and storylines. In public spaces, you'll see your targets and the world as they want to be seen, usually visually impressive and with the veneer of impenetrable security. But by skulking around, we can pick up on rumours and gather tools that we can use to make our way behind the scenes, where we're rewarded with fun character moments of the bad guys being horrible, the opportunity to mess around with the level, and pick up on story details that are much more rewarding to find, because it feels like we're not supposed to be seeing them. Expanded to the scope of a whole level, these concepts of public and private spaces create the overall landscape of a Hitman location, and the proportions of each, as well as their configurations within a level, can drastically change how each feels to play. In fact, the layout of public and private spaces is such a big deal that the Hitman team have come up with 2 different terms to describe the extremes of their design process. First, we have snail houses, which are levels that are supposed to look like snail shells? Yeah, I don't really get it either. In essence, what the term means is that a snail house is built around spiraling layers, with no clear divisions between public and private locations. Snail houses are usually made of pathways and shortcuts that all fold into each other in a way that makes the level feel much larger and more complex than it actually is. A good example of snail house design can be found in the mission, the Ark Society, which has massive semi-public spaces, but also a lot of different entryways into various layers of security. Basically all the battlements are climbable, there's a variety of massive crowds for you to get lost in, and you can even crawl through the sewers like a giant bold rat. Rather
As someone who negative maxes regular Hitman, this seems impossible.
than the challenge coming from
There's
how
so
you'll
many.
infiltrate security and remain hidden, snail houses present a challenge of improvisation and navigation, with you working out the most effective route to your target and the fastest escape
so
method while
many
dealing with a lot of events and systems that all
disguises and
bleed into
stuff.
each other in an interesting way. The other kind of level is a fortress, defined by being more or less the exact opposite. A fortress level is one with strict divides between public and private space, and as a result has a much more clear A to B structure, with you starting in a completely public area and your target hanging around somewhere heavily guarded. For example, the mansion in Dartmoor is a classic fortress, with the grounds being fairly open and accepting of a variety of disguises, but the house itself being under heavy guard and with multiple layers of security all stacked on top of each other, meaning you'll either have to carefully manage your disguises or find some way to lure the lady of the house down to ground level in order to reach and then kill her. Obviously, these two fall on a spectrum, with most of Hitman's strongest levels finding a sweet spot somewhere in the middle. Sapienza and Mendoza start as snail houses, but flow into fortresses, giving them a great dramatic arc of rising tension, and Miami, one of Hitman 2's best levels, is literally half snail house and half fortress, being split right down the middle by a racetrack. In fact, it's when a level veers too far in one direction that problems start to occur. I've already mentioned Colorado, but Colombia from Hitman 2 also commits too hard to fortressy level design, being effectively 3 different fortresses split by vast gulfs of essentially nothing, with little interaction between the town, mansion, and drug plant. This creates a level that feels kind of stilted, and the lack of freedom in approaching these various areas can limit their replayability and how much they reward thinking outside the box. Going too far into snail house design, on the other hand, can just lead to players getting lost. Mumbai is so interspersed with ladders, sneaky shortcuts, different disguise zones, and security checkpoints, all of which have the same rundown aesthetic, that I don't think I could navigate the place without checking the map at least once, and I've beaten it at least 10 times. A similar dichotomy can be seen in roamers and dwellers, the 2 different kinds of target. As you might have guessed, dwellers mostly stay in one place and need to be assaulted or somehow drawn out, and roamers need to be ambushed or isolated, and these 2 types play very differently depending on whether they inhabit a snail house or a fortress. For example, in Whittleton Creek, the suburban neighborhood's many witnesses make dealing with Nolan Cassidy, a roamer, quite difficult, encouraging you to draw him indoors or into a garden for a sneaky kill. But when killing old man Janus, a dweller who never leaves his house, these densely packed domestic settings actually work against you, and infiltrating up to his room where he spends a lot of time and can be poisoned is very hard work. By designing levels that are open-ended, yet constrained enough to push you into encountering a variety of interesting emergent problems, Hitman ensures that no matter how good you are at the game, you'll never be completely sure how to deal with the constantly evolving sandbox of each playthrough. Of course, each level's elements are merely the tools players have to work with. If Hitman doesn't do a good job of encouraging you to use them and rewarding players for finding new solutions to levels they've already played, then all that effort setting the stage for creativity will be for nothing. Mission stories and challenges are the game's solution to this problem. The former are essentially highly scripted quests that direct players into a situation where they can easily kill their target. In Paris, the very first level of Hitman 1, new players just wandering around the level will quickly bump into this guy, Helmut Kruger, and will be prompted to knock him out, take his place, and then go to a one-on-one meeting with one of the targets, leading to a great opportunity to poison her drink. She even gives you some poison. It is really not difficult. Mission stories serve a dual function. They're both a nice simplified version of a playthrough for casual players or for those who aren't confident playing completely alone, but for more experienced players, they're also an overview of each level and a way of highlighting all the interesting mechanics that you have to play with. For example, in Chongqing, one of the mission stories involves you impersonating an inspector who's looking around this secret base. And in doing so, you get a lovely guided tour of the facility and how all the security measures work, introducing you to some fun systems you can play around with when you come back in your next playthrough and try your assault from a different direction. Once players have scoped out the level and have been introduced to the themes of each location, however, they're going to need an additional incentive to keep experimenting. This is where challenges and mastery come in. Where mission stories give new players a helping hand, challenges encourage experts to broaden their horizons and test their limits. For example, in Dubai, one particularly interesting challenge asks you to eliminate both targets while they're parachuting, prompting most people to ask, wait, the targets can parachute? What the hell? Beating this challenge requires players to know the level inside out and how to manipulate both targets into trying to escape via parachute, as well as knowing exactly where to stand in order to shoot them down or where the parachutes are stored so they can be sabotaged. Another fun challenge in Haven Island, Hitman 2's second DLC, requires you to kill all 3 targets with poison. Not only does this require a comprehensive knowledge of the map to even know how to do this, it also means you'll need to figure out how to get enough poison to pull it off. Hint, you're going to need an accomplice or 2. Really though, challenges and mission stories are just the build-up
You're
to
capturing
Hitman's endgame
frogs?
challenges. Suit only, sniper only, and silent assassin, which require you to beat the mission without ever putting on a disguise, making all kills with a sniper, and without being spotted. These extra bonus challenges put all the things you've learned to the test and cause you to fundamentally re-evaluate how you play each level. Most mission stories are off the table, easy, messy kills aren't an option, and previously safe areas will now be totally off limits without a disguise. The final challenges of each level are an ultimate test of your creativity because they strip away all the training wheels and force you to engage only with Hitman's most fundamental mechanics, as well as your knowledge of the map design. One of my favourite attempts at the hat trick of Sniper, Suit, and Silent happened in Hokkaido, and forced me to rely on some very creative tactics in order to take out mob fixer Yuki Yamazaki and Eric Sodas, who's under heavy guard in an
He's
operating
already
room.
changed though.
First, I had to make a death-defying run into the guard station to steal the map's single keycard hacker. Then, I smuggled a sniper rifle down to the morgue, and using knowledge of a mission story I'd done in a previous run, took a daring shot into a secured room to kill a replacement heart destined for Mr. Sodas, killing him without having to brave the deadly hospital. What followed was a nail-biting game of cat and mouse as I made my way outside and up to a scenic overlook to wait for Yuki to go and smoke some cigarettes I planted earlier before popping her in the head and making my escape before anyone wised up to what happened. Hitman levels shine when they tread a difficult line between freedom and restriction. And judging from interviews with the developers, much of the design work that goes into levels is less about figuring out the locations and targets and more about getting this balance right. If we look back at why the older Hitman games didn't see the same level of love as the World of Assassination trilogy, it's in many ways because they're either too restrictive or don't give players enough direction. The early Hitman games, as well as Absolution, have very narrowly designed levels with only one or two solutions, meaning the players never really have to get creative and they're left with a fairly middling stealth game with a bunch of vestigial mechanics bolted on. Blood Money and Hitman Contracts, on the other hand, drop you into a level with no help and actively punish you by increasing your notoriety score or reducing your end of mission cash for trying to explore and experiment, conditioning players to restrict themselves to only safe, reliable strategies. It takes a great deal of confidence in your level design and your players to let them off the leash and allow them to make their own fun. And while many other games have tried, only IO Interactive have managed to completely master the formula and have been willing to totally commit. Hitman 3 is essentially one giant flourish, as IO Interactive acknowledged that after 21 long years, the technology and expertise is finally in place for them to make the perfect Hitman game. If you needed any more proof that the Hitman team have an unshakable confidence that they know what they're doing, just look at how they mess with your expectations in Berlin. There's this big sniper tower that should instantly catch your attention, but it's full of proximity sensors and under constant surveillance. What about the mission story where you impersonate the club owner? Well, for the first time ever, your targets call your bluff and trap you in a tense shootout. These little jokes at the player's expense work because Hitman has trained you so well that you know everything you need to be a master assassin, including the fact that there's always another surprise around the corner. Hitman has seen a rocky road to 2021, between IO Interactive getting abandoned by Square Enix, uncertain financial prospects, as well as a couple of games that were just flat out bad. But after a long journey, things are finally looking up for the Hitman team. Maybe when they're done with making a trilogy of James Bond games, they can revisit Agent 47 once more and put him through his paces once again. I know that I'll certainly be waiting for the silent assassin to make his fuck shit, god damn it. Where's my last autosave? Oh, all the way back there. Fuck. Screw it. Hello, and thank you for having this in the background for the better part of 20 minutes while you do something more interesting. This is the part of the video where I give a shout out to a cool internet thing, my lovely patrons, as well as any suspiciously bold assassins who've managed to infiltrate the list. This video's cool internet shoutout is a double whammy. First, I'd like to give a plug to Hitmaps, which is a ridiculously comprehensive website detailing all of the world assassination maps, and it was an incredibly useful resource for both editing.
Hitmaps. Bing bing bong. Thanks for watching.